When 8-year-old Amara burst through the doors of the Memphis police station that cold December evening, tears streaming down her face, no one expected what she was about to reveal. Her small hands trembled as she clutched a piece of torn fabric, and her voice cracked with desperation as she pleaded with the desk sergeant. "Please, you have to help my mama," she whispered, her braided hair disheveled from running 6 blocks in the bitter winter wind. "She's been awake for 3 weeks straight, and I think she's dying. But she won't stop. She just keeps saying the children need her." The seasoned officers had seen it all during their years of service, but something about this little girl's urgency cut through their professional detachment. Her words would lead them on a journey that would restore their faith in humanity and remind them why they chose to serve and protect their community. Officer Marcus Williams had been counting down the minutes to the end of his shift when he heard the commotion at the front desk. 23 years on the force had taught him to recognize different types of emergencies by their sound alone. But this wasn't the usual Friday night chaos of domestic disputes or petty theft reports. This was something different. A small girl with carefully braided hair and a worn winter coat 3 sizes too big was speaking rapidly to Sergeant Patricia Moore, her voice shaking with an urgency that made everyone in the station stop and listen. Her sneakers had holes in them, and her breath still formed small clouds in the warm air of the station, evidence of her frantic run through the December night. "Ma'am, slow down," Sergeant Moore said gently, kneeling to the child's eye level. "Tell me your name first." "Amara Washington," the girl replied, wiping her nose with the back of her sleeve. "I live at Pine Ridge Apartments with my mama Keisha and my little brother Malik. Please, you have to come with me. My mama needs help, but not the kind you think." Officer Williams approached the desk, his instincts telling him this wasn't a typical child welfare call. His partner, Officer Janet Torres, joined them, her 15 years of experience having taught her to read between the lines when children spoke about their parents. "What kind of help does your mama need, sweetheart?" Officer Torres asked, her voice carrying the maternal warmth that made her the department's go-to officer for sensitive cases involving families. Amara's eyes filled with fresh tears as she explained, "She won't eat dinner with us anymore. She just drinks coffee and works on her machine all night. I can hear it going click, click, click until the sun comes up. Yesterday, I found her asleep at the kitchen table with her face on some red fabric, and her hands were all cut up from the scissors." The officers exchanged glances loaded with 23 years of shared experiences. They had responded to countless domestic situations, and the pattern Amara described could indicate several concerning scenarios. But something about the child's demeanor suggested there were layers to this story they hadn't uncovered yet. "She keeps saying, 'Christmas is in 5 days,' and crying," Amara continued, pulling that piece of torn fabric from her pocket. "This fell off her table when she was working. I think she's making something, but I don't know what. She just keeps saying, 'The children need me,' over and over." The drive to Pine Ridge Apartments took 12 minutes through the winding streets of South Memphis. 12 minutes that Amara used to paint a picture of her mother that grew more complex with each detail. Officer Williams adjusted his rear-view mirror to keep an eye on the little girl in the back seat, noting how she unconsciously clutched that piece of red fabric like a lifeline. "My mama works at Fletcher Textile Factory during the day," Amara explained, her voice steadier now that help was on the way. "She sews big pieces of cloth that become curtains and stuff for hotels. Then she comes home and cooks dinner for me and Malik, helps us with homework, and reads us stories." "That sounds like a good mama," Officer Torres said encouragingly from the passenger seat. "She is," Amara replied quickly, as if she needed to defend her mother's character. "That's why I don't understand what's happening now. 3 weeks ago, she started staying up after we went to bed. At first, I thought she was just cleaning or paying bills like she usually does, but then I started hearing her sewing machine." Officer Williams pulled into the parking lot of Pine Ridge Apartments, a modest complex of 2-story brick buildings that housed working families trying to make ends meet. The apartments weren't fancy, but they were clean and well-maintained, with small attempts at beauty visible in the potted plants, by doorways, and children's chalk art on the sidewalks. "That's our apartment," Amara pointed to a second-floor unit where warm light glowed through thin curtains. Even from the parking lot, they could hear the distinctive rhythm of a sewing machine running at full speed. "She's still working." As they climbed the external staircase, Officer Torres noticed details that painted a picture of a family doing their best with limited resources. The doormat was worn but clean, and someone had hung a small wreath made of pine cones and red ribbon on the door. The sound of the sewing machine grew louder with each step, accompanied by what sounded like quiet gospel music playing in the background. "Before we knock," Officer Williams said gently, placing a hand on Amara's shoulder, "is there anything else you need to tell us about your mama? Anything that might help us understand what's going on?" Mira looked up at him with eyes that seemed too mature for her 8 years. "She always says that Christmas is the hardest time for families like ours. She says some children go to bed on Christmas Eve knowing there won't be anything under the tree in the morning. She says she remembers what that feels like." The officers felt a shift in their understanding as Amara continued. "Last week, I heard her on the phone with Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs. Mrs. Rodriguez was crying because she can't afford presents for her 3 kids this year. Her husband got laid off from the warehouse in November." Officer Torres felt her throat tighten as she realized where this story might be heading. "What did your mama say to Mrs. Rodriguez?" "She told her not to worry," Amara replied simply. "She said she had an idea." When Keisha Washington opened the door, the first thing the officers noticed wasn't her exhaustion, though that was evident in her red-rimmed eyes and the way she swayed slightly on her feet. It wasn't the small bandages on her fingers or the fabric scraps clinging to her oversized Memphis Grizzlies t-shirt. It was the immediate look of panic that crossed her face when she saw the police uniforms. "Oh no," she whispered, her hand flying to her chest. "Amara, baby, what did you do?" "Ma'am, please don't be alarmed," Officer Williams said quickly, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Your daughter was worried about you. She came to the station asking for help. We just want to make sure everyone's okay." Keisha looked from her daughter to the officers, confusion replacing panic. "Help? What kind of help?" "She says you haven't been sleeping or eating much," Officer Torres explained gently. "She's concerned about your health. She mentioned you've been working on some kind of project." The sound of the sewing machine had stopped when they knocked, but the apartment still hummed with the energy of intense activity. From where they stood at the doorway, the officers could see the small living room had been transformed into what looked like a textile workshop. Fabric pieces covered every available surface, and a pathway had been cleared through the creative chaos. Keisha's shoulders sagged as she realized her secret was about to be exposed. I I wasn't trying to worry anybody. She looked at her daughter's concerned face and made a decision. "Come in. I guess it's time to explain." What they found inside the apartment left all 3 adults speechless. Every inch of available space had been converted into a Christmas workshop. The dining table, the coffee table, even the kitchen counters were covered with handmade toys in various stages of completion. Stuffed animals, dolls with carefully embroidered faces, small quilts with intricate patterns, knitted hats and scarves, wooden toy cars painted in bright colors, and dozens of gift bags waiting to be filled. "Ma'am," Officer Torres whispered, her professional composure cracking as she took in the scene. "How many children are you making gifts for?" Keisha wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving small streaks of fabric dye on her cheeks. 47, she said quietly. "There are 47 children in this apartment complex, and I know for a fact that at least 15 families won't be able to afford Christmas presents this year." She walked to the kitchen table where a notebook lay open, covered with her careful handwriting. "I've been keeping track. Ages, interests, clothing sizes when I could find out. Mrs. Rodriguez's 3 kids, the Johnson family's 4 children, old Mr. Peterson's granddaughter who's staying with him while her mama gets back on her feet, the new family from Somalia who just moved into 2B and don't know anyone yet." Officer Williams picked up a small stuffed elephant, noting the precise stitching and the tiny heart embroidered on its chest. "You made all of this yourself?" "I've been collecting fabric scraps from work for months," Keisha explained, her voice gaining strength as she shared her mission. "Mr. Fletcher at the textile factory said I could take the leftover pieces that were just going to be thrown away. I've been staying up after the kids go to bed, working a few hours here and there. But then December came, and I realized I was running out of time." She gestured to the sewing machine, an older model that had clearly seen years of faithful service. "This belonged to my grandmother. She taught me to sew when I was Amara's age. She always said that a needle and thread in the right hands could stitch hearts together, not just fabric. Amara moved to her mother's side, slipping her small hand into Keisha's larger one. I didn't know, Mama. I thought you were sick. Keisha knelt down to her daughter's level, cupping her face gently. Baby girl, I should have told you what I was doing. I just want it to be a surprise. I know what it feels like to be 8 years old on Christmas morning and have nothing to unwrap. I know what it feels like to watch your mama try not to cry because she couldn't afford to make Christmas magical for you. The officers stood in the middle of this remarkable scene, surrounded by evidence of one woman's determination to ensure that no child in her community would experience the disappointment she remembered from her own childhood. Each handmade item represented hours of careful work, love stitched into every seam. Officer Williams, a father of two daughters himself, felt tears forming in his eyes as he picked up a small doll with skin the color of rich cocoa and hair styled in tiny braids, clearly made with a specific child in mind. His voice was thick with emotion when he finally spoke. Ma'am, this isn't a mental health crisis or a neglect situation. This is love working overtime. Within an hour of the officer's return to the station, word had spread through the Memphis Police Department like wildfire. Officers finishing their shifts stopped by the station to hear the story firsthand. Captain Robert Hayes, a 30-year veteran who had seen every kind of human tragedy and triumph, declared it the most beautiful emergency call of his career. By Saturday morning, a steady stream of police officers, their families, and community members had begun arriving at Keisha's apartment. They brought fabric, thread, batting for stuffed animals, gift wrap, ribbons, and most importantly, willing hands to help complete the Christmas mission. Officer Torres, who had been so moved by the story that she couldn't sleep Friday night, organized a volunteer schedule. We've got 47 children counting on Christmas morning, she announced to the growing crowd of helpers. Let's make sure they get it. The local news station picked up the story Saturday evening. Reporter Maria Santos interviewed Keisha as volunteers worked around her, some sewing, others stuffing animals, still others organizing completed gifts by apartment number and child's name. I never expected this, Keisha said, gesturing to the dozen people who had turned her small apartment into a Christmas production center. I just couldn't stand the thought of children in my building waking up to nothing on Christmas morning. Every child deserves to feel special on Christmas. Fletcher Textile Factory, where Keisha worked, not only gave her paid time off to rest and supervise the volunteer operation, but delivered 3 large boxes of high-quality fabric remnants on Sunday morning. The local Walmart donated gift bags, tissue paper, and candy canes to complete each present. By Monday evening, Christmas Eve, 47 beautifully wrapped packages waited in Keisha's apartment, each labeled with a child's name and containing at least one handmade item and one store-bought addition donated by community members. Christmas morning brought a scene that would be talked about in Pine Ridge Apartments for years to come. Families emerged from their apartments to find gifts waiting outside their doors, each package accompanied by a simple card. Every child deserves Christmas magic, with love from your neighbors. Mrs. Rodriguez's 8-year-old son, Miguel, found a hand-knitted scarf in Memphis Grizzlies colors and a new basketball under the small tree in their living room. He wore the scarf to Christmas dinner and told everyone who would listen about the Christmas angels who lived in his building. The Johnson family's youngest daughter discovered a doll that looked just like her, complete with the same gap-toothed smile and hair styled in 2 puff balls. She named the doll Christmas and carried it everywhere for months afterward. Officer Williams returned to Pine Ridge Apartments on Christmas afternoon, not in an official capacity, but because he wanted to see the result of the most extraordinary emergency call of his career. He found Amara and her little brother Malik playing in the courtyard with at least 20 other children, all showing off their new toys and comparing their Christmas hauls. Officer Williams, Amara called out, running to greet him with a huge smile. Look what my mama made for me. She held up a beautiful quilted backpack with her name embroidered on the front in colorful thread. Keisha appeared at her apartment door, looking rested for the first time in weeks. The dark circles under her eyes were fading, and she wore a smile that seemed to light up the entire courtyard. Thank you, she said simply as Officer Williams approached, for understanding, for helping, for believing that what I was doing mattered. No, ma'am, he replied, watching the children play with their handmade treasures. Thank you for reminding us what this job is really about. It's not just about catching the bad guys or writing tickets. Sometimes it's about recognizing love in action and helping it reach even more people. The story didn't end on Christmas Day. Word continued to spread through Memphis and beyond. Keisha received letters from people across the country, many containing donations for next year's Christmas project. A local church offered her their fellowship hall as a workspace, and a craft store chain provided supplies for what became an annual community Christmas workshop. Today, 3 years later, the Pine Ridge Christmas Project has grown into a citywide initiative. Keisha still leads the effort, but she's joined by dozens of volunteers who gather every November to begin creating Christmas magic for children whose families are struggling financially. Amara, now 11, is one of the project's most dedicated helpers. She's learned to sew from her mother and specializes in making small stuffed animals. When asked what she wants to be when she grows up, she has a ready answer. A police officer, just like Officer Williams and Officer Torres, because they showed me that helpers come in all different uniforms, and the most important thing is recognizing when someone needs you to believe in their dreams. Officer Williams keeps a photo on his desk from that first Christmas morning. It shows Amara hugging her mother while surrounded by children from their apartment complex, all of them smiling and holding their handmade gifts. Whenever he has a difficult day on the job, whenever he starts to lose faith in humanity, he looks at that picture and remembers that sometimes the emergency isn't what you think it is. Sometimes it's just love working so hard that it needs a little help to shine brighter. In your community, what acts of love might be working overtime, just waiting for recognition and support? Sometimes the greatest emergencies are the beautiful ones, when someone's heart is so full of giving that they need help to make their dreams a reality.